1772 credit crash. What is a credit crash? A credit crash is a form of a financial crisis. A financial crisis is any situation where the nominal value of financial assets or financial institutions drastically drops. Financial crisis may lead to huge panic by the investors in the fear of losing money spent on the asset or the institution. Credit crisis is the economic condition where there is a huge difficulty in getting investment capital from banks and investors. The lenders are reluctant to lend to the borrowers because of the fear of bankruptcies and defaults by the borrowers. One credit crisis that occurred is the 1772 credit crash in London. This crash started in London but soon spread throughout Europe. It highly affected Scotland and the Netherlands, and it was also said to cause the feud between Great Britain and the 13 original colonies of the United States of America. At this time, people were very confident and reliant on the banks, leading the economic growth to depend on the credit system. But when the partner of the financial bank, Alexander Fortis, fled to France, people started to lose confidence with the system. This led to people waiting in lines to deposit their debt bills into cash and not rely or trust with the credit system. To understand what happened in the 1772 credit crash, one must understand what happened before. From the mid-1760s to the early 1770s, the credit boom, supported by merchants and bankers, facilitated the expansion of manufacturing, mining, and internal improvements in both Britain and the 13 original colonies. London was a financial hub of the world, with huge wealth accumulated from resources exploited from British colonies and colonial trade. This accumulation of wealth created a huge optimism of credit expansions for the British banks. British banks had been lending credit to the American colonies to bear the expenses for plantation and cultivation of tobacco, rice, and indigo. Parallel to these events, the Scotland financial system was also seeing the establishment of major financial institutions. The British companies, such as the East India Company, were generating huge amounts of wealth and profits, and so many investors, also from London but Scotland and Netherlands, were holding the stocks of the company hyper-optimistically with the aim of making huge profits. The 1772 to 1773 had several claims to being a crucial episode in the history of financial crisis. The effects after the crisis were experienced by Scotland, Netherlands, and the 13 colonies in the US. Scotland was able to recover after the harsh aftershocks of the sharp and disastrous effects of the crisis. It did so by its efficient harvest in 1773, which brought the economy back to its feet. This included cheap money, excellent fisheries, and cattle trade. However, Europe suffered a dramatic rise in the number of bankruptcies. Banks involved in speculation suffered hard losses during the crisis. Nonetheless, banks that were not engaging in such speculations did not suffer from the effects of the crisis and hence did not experience any losses in their financial assets. In contrast, they gained a positive status among financial institutions and gave people much needed security and confidence during the turbulence. The East India Company carried many losses and its stock price fell greatly. As many important financial institutions held their shares in this company, they suffered important losses that were passed on across borders, causing a heavily interdependence between financial institutions and giving rise to the expansion of the crisis. The 1772 credit crash heavily influenced the debtor-to-creditor relationship between the American colonies and Britain. After the outbreak of the crisis, British merchants discreetly called for debt repayment, and American planters faced a serious problem of how to pay such debt. In a desperate attempt to repay the debt, American colonies wished to do so by providing bills of exchange. Nevertheless, this did not occur, mainly because the credit system in Britain broke down and made it impossible for the colonies to repay through bills of exchange and other monetary figures. Without the support of credit from Britain, the colonies were unable to continue to produce and sell their goods. Since the whole market became crippled, the fallen price of their goods also intensified the pressure on planters. The crisis also worsened the relationship of the North American colonies and Britain, due to the fact that it affected all 13 of the colonies and made the British introduce controversial legislation for the colonies in an attempt to cure the effects of the crisis. All this being said, the unpredictability of financial markets have enabled us now, in modern times, to focus on the fall of capital markets and be more savvy. It made society realize that these can be very unsustainable by themselves without the effects of war. Harvest failure or government policy. Just a mere speculation can give rise to a harmful fluctuation in asset prices and heavy losses that only burden domestic markets but foreign markets as well.